All right, we'll get a new 30-minute game going. See what we get today. At the white pieces, 1e4. King's pawn opening. All right, we'll try to get a Roy Lopez on the board. Knights come out. Their bishop comes out. So what do we do against this? D4 looks like an option. It's sort of like how you would respond to the hillbilly attack with the Caro. We have, I guess, pawn comes out, takes, 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 and then we're just sort of ahead in development. That seems decent. Queen comes out. Okay, so they're threatening adding a defender to this square. Well done. So we could add a defender like this. We could add a defender like this. I like the bishop move a little bit because we're developing a piece. And if they do want to take, when we take back, we're threatening the queen. Let's go ahead and do that. This also adds a defender to this f2 pawn, which is looking a little dangerous. Okay, they get their knight out. So it seems like they have some sort of plan of attack. If we take here, they can take back with the queen, so then we can't take. Okay. So not quite a free piece for us. We can't push this pawn either because their knight will simply take it. Maybe we get our light squared bishop out to, say, b5 and then get castled. Their king is nice and exposed, so we might have some opportunities there for dangerous ideas. Let's get our development done first. Let's get castled. They take. All right. Let's proceed thoughtfully. Take, takes, takes. So we lose that exchange. We could push here. No, I think that just loses the pawn to queen takes pawn. I think they got me pretty good on this one. We could lose the piece. We could take here. I don't think that accomplishes anything for us. They simply take back. We could go ahead and get castled. They do have knight to c2, which looks dangerous. Well, our queen is defending that square, so I'm not as worried about it. Yeah, maybe we go ahead and get castled. Just say, hey, we're down the piece. The more pieces we can keep on the board, I think the better state we'll be in. So let's get castled. Gosh. Okay. So we can take... That's an even trade. All right. Bishop over here loses the bishop to knight takes. Knight out to d2 interrupts our queen a little bit, but does protect this rook on a1, which I think is probably the best move here. So I think we get our knight out to d2. Yeah. And then, can we do anything to target their somewhat vulnerable king? Rook to e1, and then pushing this pawn up looks decent. Alright, they play knight to c3, hitting our queen, which is vulnerable. I wish if we could just teleport our queen over to e7, that would be checkmate, and that looks really nice, but I don't see an easy way to get our queen over to that square. Maybe queen out to f3. I guess first of all, is their knight threatening to come anywhere particularly dangerous? These don't look too bad. They could be targeting our pawn, so they've forked our queen and our pawn. So queen over to g4 looks decent to get our queen out of harm's way and protect the pawn. Knight to e2 comes with check, but that would still be guarded by our queen pretty much no matter where it moves. Yeah, so I think queen out to g4 looks pretty good here. Connecting our rooks. We can't hit their queen now because their knight is guarding that b1 square. But now we're hitting this g7 pawn, which looks kind of nice. Yep, they move forward. So now we could move our queen up to g5, threatening... Oh no, their knight is guarding that square. You do like that. Threaten. Nope, that's also... Their knight is guarding that square as well. Get our knight a little bit more into the mix, starting to threaten some dangerous ideas. Ooh, here's a danger. Pawn out to d6, both hitting our bishop and a discovered attack on our queen. We could move over to, let's see, h4 to prevent that idea. And then maintaining contact. Well, we wanted to guard this e2 square as well. Maybe pushing the pawn forward, so if they push, we have takes. Well, no, if we push this pawn forward and they do that, that's still bad news for us. So how do we mitigate d6? Queen move doesn't seem to be the way. We could make a bishop move. Oh, look at that. Bishop over to d4, hitting their rook. Looks decent. This bishop is not guarded by anything, so we will need to be careful about that. But that looks like a pretty good move to me. Well, hold on. Bishop, knight out with check. Queen takes. Queen takes. And then we've traded another piece for no advantage. So maybe that's not the best move. But that is one option. I like that well enough. Anything else we can do to mitigate d6? Queen over to f4 invites this fork. That looks nasty. Queen to... I guess queen to f3. Yeah, I like queen to f3 well enough. Maybe that's where we should have moved in the first place. Or we could generate a threat of our own with... No, rook to b1 runs into their knight. Okay. I like knight to c4. I think it did like knight to c4. Is there some reason that I didn't like that? I guess, yeah, knight to c4. If they play this, then we have takes with check, takes, knight takes queen, pawn takes bishop. Well, I think we're still losing in that exchange. It's a queen trade, which doesn't favor us. It's a tough position. Tough position. Could play rook out to e1. Well, no. We need to do something against d6. I think, yeah, queen back to f3. Looks like the move. Don't love moving our queen twice in a row. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Then maybe we can push our pawn up to e5. They take a pawn. Okay. Not the end of the world. I think enabling, honestly, what is this? Bishop to d4. Our knight is hanging. Bishop to d4. They take our knight. We take their rook. Yeah, it seems decent. And then we're also, now we have rook to c1, which looks pretty good. Maybe pawn to f6 is the clearest defense. But then we have takes. Well, here we have, yeah, in the case of pawn to f6, we have bishop takes, and they can't recapture because our queen is guarding that square as well. So this is just a pure fork of two pieces. That's great. That's exactly what we needed. Just a little bit of breathing room, and maybe winning this piece back that we've lost. This also unsticks us from any ideas of pawn out to d6. Yep, pawn out. So I think we pick up this free piece. There we go. And now minor piece material is even. We're down a couple of pawns. But I think our position is much better. And then we're threatening takes, and then, oh no, we're not really threatening that, are we? Okay. So they're threatening to get their light squared bishop out, perhaps. No, that loses it. Can we drive their queen away? I would really like to do that. Let's look at what squares their queen can travel to. Out this way, out this way. Very few squares that their queen can travel to, so let's take a gander. Piece captures. This loses the queen. Loses the queen. Loses the queen. Loses the queen. So we need to leave our a1 rook in place so that it can guard this a2 pawn. So if we're looking at any rook move, it's probably rook over to c1. All these, lose the queen. Keep you in place, loses the queen. Loses the queen. Loses the queen. Loses the queen. So queen to a4 would be the only option. And that looks pretty good. That sort of gets the queen out of our business and frees us up to do some neat attacking moves. So let's play our rook out to c1. Queen to a4 is more or less forced, and then we can figure out what we want to do next. I think going for an attack seems very good. So like takes here, probably take back, and then, yep. Just attacking their very exposed king. We could also, I think if we push this pawn, we're helping them create this nice defensive fortification, which I don't want to do. So let's take here. Expecting takes. And then what now? Come out here and sort of take a couple of these pawns. That doesn't look amazing. Maybe we should have taken... ooh, actually, that looks really good. So if we dropped our queen back to c3, then we could maybe take on c7. Well, they can push c7. Let's drop our queen back maybe to h4, guarding this f2 pawn, which looks a little vulnerable. I guess if we pushed this, our queen would be very vulnerable. Actually, yeah, maybe c3 is a little bit better for a queen. These both look good. Can't quite... Okay. Yeah. Expecting to see another pawn push here, further weakening their position. This c7 pawn is very vulnerable, so pawn out to c6 or c5 looks decent. Or they could drop their queen back. No. Maybe queen over to c6. Okay, that's another way to do it. Queen back to d7. So now we can push our pieces a little bit further. That's a forkable square. This is a battery, but it's not threatening the right square at all. So if they were here and our pawn wasn't in a way, they'd be threatening checkmate on g2. They're simply not doing that right now, so I'm not worried about that. Maybe knight out. Knight out looks decent. We push our pawn to e5. If they take, we take back with check. That looks like it could be something interesting. So pawn push is a move. Maybe knight out to f3. Sort of, I don't love how this rook is staring down our f2 pawn. That looks like a little bit of a weakness. If we move our knight out first, pushing has a little bit more oomph as well, which I like. Let's get our knight out a little bit further. Let's see how our opponent is planning to unstick their position. Their light squared bishop is stuck in place by their queen. Okay, there we go. They're preparing to perhaps fianchetto it. Not a bad idea. Meantime, I think we can play e5 very safely. Maybe pushing is the right move here. We could align our rook to this pawn and then push it further, threatening their queen. We could push our queen up to c6. Yeah. Queen trade. I don't think that benefits us necessarily. That just looks like a neat idea. Yeah, maybe rook over to e1, preparing this pawn push. I guess rook over to e1, pawn pushes to d4. Then we have knight takes on d4. And they lose the pawn. Or pawn pushes to e6, queen takes on e6, rook over to e1, pinning the queen to the king. Ooh, that looks good. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Let's do that. They can push in response, I think, but we have knight takes on d4. Other options for our opponent are few and far between. They drop their queen back, which doesn't look very good. Queen over here. Okay, yeah. Queen moves, so they spot the pin. I think that's a good move. Oh, but I think we can win a rook. I think we can win a rook. So queen up to c6. That's check. And threatens their rook as well. Queen up to c6. Queen can't get in the way. Any piece that they put on the square, they will lose. So I think they need to move their king over to d8. And we almost have checkmate. It's a shame. Okay, but this looks very bad for our opponent. We also have, depending on what they play, we have knight up to e5, adding more pressure to this d7 square, which is potentially a checkmating square. So I'm expecting, let's see, king over to d1. Yep. We take here, pinning their bishop to their king. Or we play, let's see, knight up to e5. Let's say they play some innocuous pawn move. No, I don't think that works. So we have check, bishop takes, pawn takes. Okay, so that doesn't have enough venom. Oh, what about queen takes on c7? They have queen takes in response to that. Okay, so that doesn't work either. Okay, so I think we just need to take this rook. Wait. Hold on. What about queen takes d5? We still pick up a piece. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. So we get rid of this nasty pawn. They could interpose their queen here. We have this fork that I don't think accomplishes anything. But we pick up an additional piece, and if they move their queen here, then we can take on a8. Expecting to see king back here. We have 12 minutes left on the clock, so I should be a little bit cautious of time. I think perhaps our opponent played a little bit too quickly with sort of a substantial advantage right out the gate. They had that additional piece. Queen comes out. Okay. So I think here we take the rook, pinning the light squared bishop, and then I don't believe they can threaten anything. They have potentially queen takes on h2 check, but they don't have anything to back it up. So we'll take the rook. And then we have rook over to d1. Okay, they take our pawn. It's a good move. Here we have rook over to d1, hitting their king. Here we go. Yeah, rook over to d1. They can't move their bishop, so they move their king over to e8, and then we move our rook over to e1, pinning their queen to their king. There we go. That's a tactic. That's a tactic. Move over here, rook over to e1. Queen takes, rook takes with check. Yeah. That's a good move, rather than king to e8, king to e7. So we cannot take their bishop since the rook is guarding it. But it still allows us to move forward with our plan of pinning the queen to the king. Probably the move here is queen takes. They do have their... Yep. There we go. All right, and now we need to find a way to convert our advantage. We have a check available here. We have a check available here. These are both options. I like the queen option a little bit more because the king doesn't have a lot of squares to go to. Let's take a look real quick. All these are taken. All these are taken. So the king can really only move to f6 or g7. So perhaps, yeah, let's get our queen out in the mix first. Now maybe rook into the game. Again, where does their king go? These are taken. That's taken. So any one of those corner squares, it looks like. Probably not. I would guess they would move to h6. That seems like the most resilient option. This is going to be sort of tough to convert, especially in the limited time that we have left. Maybe we get our knight into the mix so we can do a little bit more damage. Knight to either one of these squares looks decent. Or no, maybe rook first. Although I guess they have king out here, king to f6, which hits our hanging rook. Oh, they move back into the corner. It seems a little bit ill-advised, I would say. Let's see. We have our knight comes out. Something that maybe looks like a smothered mate here. Let's get our knight into the mix. Just being cautious of time constraints. Rook to f7. Well, what's the most forcing? Knight moves with check. Oh, here we go. I think we have checkmate here with queen to e5. Nothing they can use. They can put their rook in the way. That's what it is. Yeah, so queen to e5. Well, I guess their king can move out like this. Oh, and then we have, yeah, so there we go. Queen to e5, king to g8, queen to g7, checkmate, supported by the rook. Okay. That's check. They also have rook up to f6. But then we simply take that, and the checkmate proceeds as we've described. Either way, we have checkmate here in just a couple of moves. How very exciting. A game where we were subject to a pretty substantial disadvantage out the gate ends in resignation. All right, let's take a look at the review. Use this tab. Bring up the analysis board. Here we go. It's visible. Yeah, book moves out the gate. C5 is a mistake already. I messed this up. D4 was not correct. I should have simply picked up the hanging pawn. It's good to know. He takes... Yep, add a defender. C6 is best. And I flubbed somehow that they were adding another attacker to the square. So I think perhaps C3 would have been strong here, and I don't see anything else. I think, yeah, C3 is the engine move. B5 is a blunder, simply losing the piece. Yeah, we ignore the threat and castle, get our king out of the way. They pick up the piece, we pick up the piece. So it's an even trade, which didn't favor me at the time. Queen takes b2 is excellent. We get our knight out. And coming up, our opponent makes three, looks like two misses and a blunder. Excited to see this. C3 is best. G4 is inaccurate. I guess queen to E1 was slightly better. Okay, that makes sense. So I think queen to F3 was sort of what we settled on, because I played queen to G4, queen to F3. The problem, of course, with queen to G4 is that it runs into D6, hitting two pieces at once. Queen to E1 looks like it would have accomplished everything we were trying to accomplish in that moment of defending this pawn on E4 and getting our queen out of the way of the attack. So that's good to know. Actually, I do want to see if queen to F3 was a decent move, which is what I should have played out of the gate. Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, that's good to know. So queen to F3, which I eventually settled on, was the right move. Yeah, they had D6 was the best move in this position, which I identified a little bit too little too late, but we did settle on that eventually. Queen takes C2 is a miss, nullifying black's advantage, and then we were able to fork their pieces. F6 is a blunder. I guess getting their knight out of the way. Oh, that's interesting. Getting their knight out of the way was the correct move. And then we take their rook. I'm not sure I understand what is going on there. Oh, and then they can pick up our... So they lose an exchange rather than a whole piece. And then with F6, they lose the whole knight. And then we're... not only are we sort of back in business, but we have a substantial advantage. We're able to... Oh, I see. Ooh, that would have been fun. So better than rook to C1 first, pawn to A4, allowing our rook to guard the A4 square and preventing their queen's only escape square. So we almost could have trapped their queen. Rook F to C1 was a mistake, because that permits them queen to A4. Oh, we were so close. So I do want to see if we had played A4 there. The best move for white is to generate a threat, and of course if they play something like, I don't know, knight to E7, then we have rook F to C1 trapping their queen. Okay. So I think maybe I could spend a little bit more time there. If we're in a situation where we're about to trap a queen, figuring out a different move we can make to remove any protections on that missing square. Cool. Trade. Rook F8 is the only move. Queen to C3 is good. F3, B6. These are all decent moves for generating threats. E6 is a great move. We're threatening that pin. Queen D7 is a blunder. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, because that permits us... Yeah, queen up to d6 would have been better, guarding this c6 square that spells our opponent's demise pretty quickly. King to d8, queen to d5 is excellent, although rook to e1, reinforcing our pawn would have been a good move too. We take the rook, they take our pawn, we hit their king, we pin their king to their queen, we take, they take, and then this spells demise pretty quickly for our opponent. After this, we're up just so much material that they can't help but to be checkmated. It's obviously coming pretty quickly here. E5 is a miss. I think I did have checkmate. Oh yeah, rook takes on h7 checkmate, supported by the knight and the queen guarding any remaining escape squares. So I missed mate in 1, but I had mate in like 2 or 3, so I feel all right about this. All right, feels good to have a win. Yeah, a little note to myself about queen and escape squares. If I'm getting ready to trap a queen, take the extra step to trap the queen. So that's good to look out for. If the queen only has 1 escape square, what can you do to lock down that square? Cool stuff. I think that's all for me. I'm going to stop it here. Have a good one, y'all.